The humid air of Dili was unusually tense that night. On the narrow stretch of road that separated a Timor-Leste patrol unit from a small Indonesian border village, the crack of gunfire shattered the silence. Within moments, a young Indonesian worker, Raka, collapsed to the ground, clutching his chest. His friends screamed for help, but it was too late. By the time he was carried across the border to a TNI post, he had already stopped breathing. The news traveled fast. Within hours, Jakarta was awake with fury. Social media platforms were flooded with hashtags demanding justice for Raka. Television stations broadcast grainy footage of the incident, replaying the chilling sound of the gunshot again and again. Inside the Ministry of Defense, Prabowo Subianto sat rigid in his chair, his face flushed with anger. Normally measured, his voice now thundered across the room as he slammed his palm against the table. This is an insult to our sovereignty. An Indonesian citizen, shot like an animal, and they think we will remain silent. His advisors shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. They had seen Prabowo angry before, but never like this. Mobilize the TNI border units, he ordered. I want full readiness. If Timor-Leste cannot control its men, we will remind them that Indonesia will not be toyed with. The room went silent. Everyone knew that Prabowo's words were not empty threats. His reputation for decisive, sometimes ruthless action was well known both at home and abroad. By dawn, the military airwaves crackled with orders. Infantry units near Nusa Tenggara received instructions to prepare for possible deployment. Warships in Kupang adjusted their patrol routes. Fighter jets were fueled and placed on standby. The world began to take notice. Foreign correspondents rushed to Jakarta, sensing that a regional crisis was about to unfold. The United Nations issued a cautious statement calling for calm and restraint. But Prabowo was unmoved. This is not just about one man, he said in a press briefing that electrified the nation. This is about dignity. This is about Indonesia's right to protect her people, wherever they are. The streets of Jakarta erupted with chants of support. Students, workers, and veterans gathered, waving red and white flags, shouting, TNI. Bella Rakyat. Justice for Raka. But behind the patriotic fervor, seasoned diplomats worried. A single misstep could reignite old tensions between Indonesia and its small neighbor, Timor-Leste, a nation still healing from its past struggle for independence. And as Prabowo's anger sent ripples across Southeast Asia, one question loomed large in every capital from Washington to Beijing. Would Indonesia really send the TNI across the border? The border between Indonesia and Timor-Leste was usually quiet. Mountains, thick jungle, and small villages where people crossed back and forth to trade goods and visit family. But after the incident, the silence was broken by the heavy rumble of TNI trucks moving toward the frontier. Soldiers in camouflage uniforms set up new checkpoints, their rifles glinting in the sun. Major General Subianto, commander of the regional forces, inspected the preparations. He knew the world's eyes were watching. Remember, he told his men, we are here to defend, not to provoke. But if they fire even one more shot, we respond with full force. His words were steady, but deep inside he feared what might come. A single clash could spiral into something far larger. Meanwhile, in Dili, Timor-Leste's young government was thrown into panic. Prime Minister Joaquim da Costa gathered his cabinet late into the night. We cannot afford war with Indonesia, he said gravely. Our nation is still fragile. But we also cannot appear weak in front of our people. His defense minister, eyes heavy with fatigue, responded, Mr. Prime Minister, we must find out who gave the order to fire. If it was a rogue soldier, we can punish him. But if Jakarta believes this was intentional, he left the rest unsaid. Da Costa nodded. Prepare a message of condolence. I will call President Widodo directly. And I want every border unit under strict control. No one fires a bullet without my order. But even as he spoke, rumors swirled across Dili. Some whispered that the soldier who fired the shot was under the influence of smugglers, bribed to create chaos. Others believed foreign hands were at play, powers who wanted to see Indonesia and Timor-Leste divided. Back in Jakarta, Prabowo faced a storm of cameras. His jaw clenched, his eyes hard, he stood before the press. I will be clear, he said. Indonesia does not seek conflict. But if our people are harmed, if our borders are violated, then the TNI will act. No nation, large or small, may trample our dignity. The words made headlines across the globe. In Washington, the State Department urged restraint. In Beijing, strategists debated whether this was a chance to expand influence in Southeast Asia. In Canberra, Australia's parliament held emergency talks. Any conflict so close to its northern shores would have serious consequences. In Jakarta's streets, nationalism flared. Protesters marched outside the Timor-Leste embassy, chanting, "Justice! Justice! Send the TNI!" Red and white flags waved in the air like flames. Raka's funeral became a national spectacle. Thousands gathered in his small village. His mother wept over the coffin draped in the Indonesian flag. TNI soldiers fired a ceremonial salute, the echo bouncing across the hills. As the crowd shouted, "Long live Indonesia!" Prabowo stood silently nearby, his fists clenched. For him, this was no longer just a border incident. It had become personal. Jakarta's presidential palace glowed under the night sky. Inside, an emergency meeting was underway. President Joko Widodo sat at the head of the table, flanked by Prabowo, the foreign minister, and senior intelligence chiefs. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and urgency. "Pak Prabowo," Jokowi began calmly, "I understand your anger. But deploying the TNI into Timor-Leste will bring international condemnation. We cannot afford a war." Prabowo leaned forward, his voice sharp. "With respect, Mr. President, this is not about war. This is about respect. If we fail to act now, the world will see Indonesia as weak. Today it is Raka. Tomorrow, it could be dozens more." The foreign minister interjected carefully, "We have already reached out to Dili. Prime Minister Da Costa has expressed condolences. They promised to investigate." Prabowo slammed his hand on the table. "Investigate? While our people bury their dead. We should not wait for their excuses. The TNI must be ready to show strength. Diplomacy without force is just begging." The room went silent. Jokowi studied him for a long moment. "And if the UN intervenes?" he asked. Prabowo's eyes narrowed. "Then let them. Indonesia does not bow to foreigners." The following morning, Jakarta woke to dramatic scenes on television. Columns of TNI armored vehicles rolled through Kupang, their engines roaring like thunder. Jets streaked across the sky, leaving white trails against the blue. For ordinary citizens, it was both frightening and exhilarating. National pride mixed with fear of war. Foreign journalists flooded the border regions, their cameras capturing every checkpoint, every soldier standing watch with his rifle at the ready. CNN described the situation as a Southeast Asian flashpoint. Al Jazeera warned of a possible repeat of past regional conflicts. At the United Nations in New York, ambassadors gathered for an emergency session. The Timor-Leste representative, pale and nervous, pleaded for calm. "We deeply regret the incident," he said. "We ask Indonesia to trust in our investigation." But Indonesia's ambassador was unyielding. "One of our citizens is dead. Apologies will not restore his life. We demand accountability. If Timor-Leste cannot control its forces, then Indonesia must protect its people by any means necessary." The Security Council erupted in debate. The United States urged restraint, warning of sanctions if Indonesia crossed the border. China, meanwhile, hinted that every nation had a right to defend its sovereignty, a subtle nod to Prabowo's position. Behind closed doors, diplomats whispered, would Indonesia really risk global condemnation for the sake of one border incident? Or was Prabowo using the tragedy to prove his strength, to send a message not just to Timor-Leste but to the world? Meanwhile, in Dili, fear spread like wildfire. Shops closed early. Families packed their belongings in case they had to flee. The memory of past violence during Timor-Leste's independence struggle haunted the older generation. At the presidential palace, Prime Minister Da Costa faced a dilemma. He had to appease his people, who demanded sovereignty, and at the same time prevent Prabowo from unleashing the TNI. His intelligence chief entered the room, carrying a confidential report. "Sir, we have evidence. The soldier who fired the shot was not acting under orders. He was drunk, and possibly bribed by smugglers." Da Costa clenched his fists. "Smugglers, or agents of another country?" The intelligence chief hesitated. "We cannot prove it, but there are signs foreign money was involved." Someone wanted this incident to happen. Da Costa's face turned grim. Then whoever they are, they may succeed. Because Prabowo is ready to move. In Jakarta, Prabowo received his own intelligence brief. A senior officer whispered, "Sir, there are whispers this was no accident. A third party may be trying to ignite conflict." Prabowo's eyes hardened. "Then we will find them. But first, Timor-Leste must feel our pressure. Only when they fear us will they reveal the truth." He stood, walking to the window where the Jakarta skyline shimmered. "If the world is shocked by my anger, let them be. Anger is power, and power commands respect."